Good afternoon. Good afternoon. At this time, we'd like to call to order the Joint Recycled Water Committee for Tuesday, September 27th, 2016. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Burt.
Here.
Councilmember Du Bois. Here. Vice Chair Estremera.
Here.
Councilmember Griffith. Board Member Kremen. Here. Board Member Keegan. Councilmember Martin Milius.
Here.
Councilmember Siegel.
Here.
Mayor Rutherford. 6 present.
Thank you. So at this time, we provide an opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda, and I don't have any speaker cards. So in that event, we will move forward. We have approval of minutes, and because this is a joint meeting of 2 subcommittees or committees, we actually have meeting minutes from each of them. The first is from the Palo Alto and Santa Clara Valley Water District Joint Recycle Water Committee from June 28, 2016. And we'll need a motion to approve, but I think Councilmember Siegel, you had a couple items?
Yeah. These minutes are very long, and I didn't feel like editing them entirely, but I noticed some mistakes that shouldn't be there. I know Palo Alto is affluent, but I think the word was supposed to be effluent. And then there was when I was talking about lead platinum, it was spelled L-E-A-D. So I'd like those words fixed, but perhaps for future minutes we could have shorter minutes so that we can actually more effectively review them for accuracy. I don't think we need such long minutes, and it's definitely too hard. You know, I wasn't going to edit the whole thing, so I don't know what other people feel.
So the question is whether you need to have those edits changed prior to approval, or whether we could just go ahead and approve them. And
I don't have a problem with approving it because I don't think it'll hurt our use of them in the future, but maybe if we could ask for shorter and more accurate minutes, that would be more useful.
Okay. All right. So we need a motion to approve. Okay.
So moved.
I'll second. Second by Director Kremen. Motion approved by Councilmember Siegel. And
as amended.
There we go. And I think in this hybrid organization we'll probably will abstain from the Sunnyvale minutes and vice versa. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So that is.
I have to abstain because I was absent at that meeting.
Okay. So that passes 4-0 with 2 abstentions. And then the next item, 3B, is approval of the November 16th, 2015 meeting minutes of the City of Sunnyvale and Santa Clara Valley Water District Recycle Water Committee. So I'll leave that up to.
And I'll move to approve those.
Great.
And I'll second it.
All right. Motion to approve by Councilmember Martin Milius, seconded by Director Estremera. And all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes 2-0. And we can now move on to the action items. So the first one is a discussion around the formalization of the collaboration that we're working on. And we have Garth, how would you like to kick it off? Great. I think so.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Garth Hall, the district's Deputy Operating Officer for Water Supply. So in the action items, we have four parts on item 4.1, and that the first has to do with the idea of countywide recycled purified water planning, including potential interties. So one of the things that is ongoing among these agencies here, led by the district as well as many of the others, is efforts to look more broadly across the entire county in terms of what is the optimal deployment of recycled water for purified and traditional recycled water use. That work is in its infancy, but since it is going to be important and will set the stage for many future efforts between not only these entities, our cities and our district, as well as many other retailers, is worthy of a mention. Item B has to do with the disposition of the proposed San Jose Water Company and Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, Mountain View MOU. And staff has no presentation on that topic, leaving it for committee discussion. There are also, related to that, in your packet, there's a copy of a letter that was authored by the city managers of Palo Alto and Mountain View, addressed to the district's CEO, related to ongoing collaboration with the district. And that may be something that the committee would like to review. So the origin of the letter was that the district's CEO met with city managers from Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, and Mountain View last week and discussed generally how the three entities could move together. And out of that meeting came the notion, and which led to the letter you have in your hands, that the city managers from the three cities, Mountain View, Palo Alto, and Mountain View, would write a letter to the district explaining their interest in moving forward with the district in terms of future collaboration. The district also did receive a letter from the city of Sunnyvale. Unfortunately, that is not in your packet today. The letter from Sunnyvale generally had the same notions in it. However, one of the things that the city of Sunnyvale's letter did not mention was how it plans to work with the San Jose Water Company going forward.
Comment? As far as I know, the letter just confirms that we want to continue to work with the water district as we have in the past, and that there is nothing of substance that has changed in any of our stances with that, and that we would like to move forward and move forward faster, if anything. So I don't see the letter here, but the gist of it, what I saw from the city manager, was that there's no intention of changing anything. We are on track to work with the water district as we have planned to do, and are moving forward in that direction.
Great, and I want to make sure I'm understanding from a staff perspective what actions and direction you're looking for from us today. Palo Alto and our partner agencies also are committed to moving forward along the lines of the plan that we've been discussing, and are particularly anxious to move forward with the MOU that we have in action item 41C. So I just want to understand from either my colleagues on the water district or staff members what additional discussion or clarifications you're seeking from us today.
Mr. Chair, so the interest of staff is for direction direction in terms of the commitment of the elected officials to move ahead with some of the projects that we have moved on, and we'll get to some of the specifics later. An enormous amount has been invested, for example, by the district in conjunction with Sunnyvale, and so it would be important for the district to know from Sunnyvale as to whether those investments will continue to potentially bear fruit for us, and whether we should do anything in addition to that to move forward. In the case of City of Palo Alto and Mountain View, I think the idea is very excellent that we do work towards an MOU. There is an item also that will come forth related to this very soon in terms of cost sharing for a strategic planning study that has been discussed at least with the board's committee. I think with the Palo Alto committee at the June meeting, it was also raised. So the question then would be guidance to staff as to the readiness to move forward with that cost sharing agreement at some point in the future. So I think in a broader sense, we're looking for moving forward together in a very collaborative fashion with a good disclosure of information and necessary agreements, cost sharing agreements, MOUs going forward. We're interested in that level of guidance.
Councilmember Siegel.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer that we should be working together on this, but I want to understand what the role of other cities might be as we move forward. Los Altos, do we cooperate with Cupertino? I mean, the water district has countywide, or not quite, it's countywide jurisdiction, and it's easy for us in Mountain View to know that we're going to cooperate with Sunnyvale and Palo Alto because we share extensive boundaries. But how do we relate to other cities who haven't submitted letters for this agenda item?
Well, I would offer that Palo Alto has 5 partner agencies in addition to Palo Alto for our wastewater treatment plant, and our staff is engaged with those agencies, and we actually have East Palo Alto as members of this committee. But in addition to East Palo Alto, we have Los Altos Hills, and Stanford as the partner agencies in our wastewater treatment plant. So from that standpoint, those 6 entities are functioning as one group, principally represented by the wastewater treatment plant. But one of the things that we've discussed in our earlier meetings is that with advanced water recycling, we move into the same water transforming from being a waste with a set of issues amongst partner agencies that are involved in a wastewater treatment plant to transformation into a commodity. And the agencies that provide water as a commodity in our communities are in some cases one and the same, and in other cases different from our local city jurisdictions. So for purposes of this committee, we've focused on the partners who are partners in the wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Bulbo, I don't know if you'd care to add just some comments on where we stand in discussions with those partner agencies and how that collaboration is envisioned in this recycling effort.
Phil Volvel, Palo Alto, representing the treatment plant and the 6 entities that Mayor Burt referred to. So it may look a little odd, Councilmember Siegel, that letter was only signed by Palo Alto and Mountain View as opposed to all the partners. I think that's sort of what you're getting at. And the reason is that Mountain View is kind of in a special situation because it, of course, borders Sunnyvale. And the 2 purple pipe systems are very nearly connected already. They get so close together. So as these studies go on, Mountain View is going to play a special role because of that. And the Palo Alto signature really represents all the partners, the other partners in the plant.
So one of the areas of discussion, and this is embodied in the joint letter from the Mountain View and the Palo Alto city managers is anticipation of, in this meeting, us having discussions about how the partnership concepts would proceed. And I think one of the questions that the Water District had was that, I guess there are two questions. One is there's a parallel effort that has been going on between the Water District and Sunnyvale, and Sunnyvale has its own wastewater treatment plant serving Sunnyvale, and I don't think any other jurisdictions involved. And then we have a similar initiative between the Water District and Palo Alto, and this item C under the action is kind of the first major step in proceeding with studies related to that initiative. But what we have discussed for a number of months is a shared vision of a very strong interest to move toward an advanced water recycling system that would turn into high purity water, a sizable portion of all of the wastewater that comes out of our plant today. And I think that one of the things that we want to do today is just validate and confirm that commitment, that this is where our cities are interested in proceeding. We certainly have a lot of steps ahead of us before we'd have the financing and a plan and a binding commitment amongst those partners for that construction and operation of that facility. And along with it will need to be some fairly involved commercial relationships between government entities. The commercial relationships between the Water District that would be providing a lot of the funding for this, and the partners in the wastewater treatment plant, and then the water provision suppliers for those same jurisdictions. And one of the things we've talked about is that the wastewater suppliers today begin to potentially be transformed into wholesale suppliers of high-value water. And this is consequently, we have a lot of dimensions to whatever future commercial agreements occur, where the capital funding will come from, how the operations will be divided, and how the ownership of that commodity will then be structured. We can't resolve those things today, and it's not on our agenda to even attempt to do that. But I think what we want to do today is confirm for the Water District our commitment from the Palo Alto plant standpoint, that this is a direction that we are highly committed to a partnership with the Santa Clara Valley Water District to do. I don't know if that helps. Yes.
Thank you. Just from a conceptual standpoint, because I'm not an expert in the water area, we have never faltered from wanting to work with the Water District in terms of getting our plant up and running and processing purified water for both potable and non-potable reuse. In addition to that, there has always been the larger plan for regionalization of connecting all of our purple pipes, so we have regional loops, as it were, to be able to help anybody when any circuit gets shut off, that we have alternatives in terms of our potable, non-potable systems. So from my standpoint as a representative of Sunnyvale, we may not have all the details worked out of all the MOUs or anything, but that certainly is the overarching goal. And the current discussion of that effluent, you know, and where it's going and who's buying what from whom, I think is one that we want to pursue for all of us. Again, this, we can be backups, however it works, we can be backups for each other would there be shutdowns, and we can work around regionally. So to me, this is a very important piece for all of us to work together to make sure that our whole region has sustainable water supplies, has control over its only local resource, as it were, for recycled water, and our ability to use that in ways that serve our cities and our region.
Agreed. And Councilmember Siegel.
Yeah, just on the substance of the issue, our geographic boundaries, the borders of our cities, don't match our physical geography. And so there are very sensible reasons for cities that are along the bay to cooperate with each other, because sometimes that's the best way to get water moved without pumping it uphill or putting it on trucks or something like that. So this is a very logical thing. If you would entertain a motion, I would move that the members of this joint body supports the development of MOUs between, on the one hand, Palo Alto and Mountain View and the district, and on the second hand, between the district and Sunnyvale, to pursue joint water recycling to serve our communities. I think that if this is an action item, I guess we need to do something like that.
Right, and I'm just trying to think through in my own mind the boundaries between what we'll be doing as a committee and what our authorities are related to the bodies that we represent. So I want to make sure that the language of motion reflects that we'd be recommending that our elected bodies would support such action.
So the idea is that as this body, we recommend the development of the MOUs, and once those are developed, those would come before each of our city councils for adoption.
Great. Just okay. That's how I understood it, and I want to make sure we're all clear on that. So I will second that motion and open it up for discussion. Who would like to?
Okay, so I have no problem at all in confirming that this is the direction, the conceptual direction that I think we all want to go. I don't think there's any dissension there. And then the details of the MOUs and so forth, and the devil's always in the details there. But those are the things that can be worked out with our subject matter experts and staff who know what they're doing in terms of getting things moving along the way.
Right, and then ultimately return to our elected bodies for ratification.
Yeah, yes,
of course.
And certainly I would support that.
Great. Anyone else? Councilmember Griffith.
Yes, and I apologize for being late. I think this motion is in a good direction, and I'm happy to support it. The one aspect I want to bring up is that Sunnyvale finds itself in the center of a lot of things that are going on. We are exploring partnerships with San Jose. We are exploring partnerships with Palo Alto. We are heavily involved in partnerships with Santa Clara Valley Water District, and those partnerships are important because the water, recycled water and water in general, is a regional resource. My only concern going forward is that we make it clear that these are cooperative and that this is not intended to create competitiveness where competitiveness need not exist. There are always concerns when we start talking with one agency when another agency says, hey, wait a minute, what does that mean to us? And our goal here should be clearly stated as moving forward, not moving forward at the expense of something else. And this has come up a couple of times in the case of Sunnyvale as we've explored our options, and I want to make it clear that this motion is intended to strictly open doors and not close any.
Councilmember Siegel?
I did not include it in the motion, but I do want to note the sentence from the joint Palo Alto Mountain View letter where it says, as such, we are no longer in discussions with the San Jose Water Company about any advanced water treatment projects. And this is the item 41B. My motion is moot on that, but I do want to note for the record that indeed that is not moving forward.
Yeah, and Councilmember Griffith, when you refer to competitiveness, maybe you need to be more clear in terms of what you're alluding to. If it is an alternative partner to the Santa Clara Valley Water District on advanced water recycling, I think that for the Palo Alto and our partners, including Mountain View, we are comfortable with committing that our future collaboration intention on advanced water recycling is with the Santa Clara Valley Water District and not with any other party. If Sunnyvale is in a different position, if that's what you're implying, then that's fine. That's Sunnyvale's prerogative. So we should just simply make sure that we're clear on what the motion means, and if not all parties are comfortable with signing on to that, then we get that clarity.
Yeah, and I'm happy to try and elaborate. This is a very complicated topic. I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot of it. I do want to express our eagerness to move forward on this. We think this is a good project. We just have had certain other agencies sort of raise their hands saying, in other cases saying, hey, wait a minute, what does this mean? And I'm a little reluctant to. I'm phrasing that badly. Let me try again. I want to make sure that we're not creating red flags where red flags need not exist, is the best way for me to put it. And I know I'm phrasing this badly, so I apologize for that. But in terms of the motion on the floor, and in terms of what we're talking about here, I think Sunnyvale would likely be enthusiastic about it. I'm cautious about messages to other people. That's largely my intent.
Okay, so that's Sunnyvale's issue on what messages you want to make, and I don't want to interject in the middle of that. I think from Palo Alto's standpoint, we think it's only appropriate to invite one girl to the dance. We are committed to moving forward with the collaboration with the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and to make it clear that that is what we're pursuing and that we're not pursuing any parallel efforts.
Yes, and I apologize if I gave that impression. This is, we are attempting to commit to this.
Okay.
And I think this is something that Sunnyvale can aggressively support.
Okay. Councilmember Du Bois?
Yeah, just want to clarify that I'm understanding this correctly. So we're really talking about two MOUs, MOU between Palo Alto Mountain View and the Santa Clara Water District, an MOU between Sunnyvale and the Santa Clara Water District. This is not an MOU between Palo Alto and Sunnyvale currently.
Correct.
Though there is some discussion about perhaps purple pipe interties. It's a question for staff. Is that meant to be kind of beyond that?
Yeah, Mr. Hall? Oh.
Member Du Bois, I just want to make sure this is working. I think in the question of that, the MOU that staff contemplates with Palo Alto and Mountain View has been launched, and it really would embrace all of the projects that have been discussed with the joint committee between the district and Palo Alto, Mountain View, and East Palo Alto and others, that committee. There is a parallel effort, and I'll touch a little bit more detail on that in a moment or two, which is further advanced in terms of the district and Sunnyvale. Both of those are important in terms of moving forward with the projects that the district has with all of the entities engaged here.
Could I just add a word?
Yes.
Phil Volvo, Palo Alto. So it does seem a bit confusing, but here's one way to think of it, Councilmember Du Bois, is that this MOU with the district and Sunnyvale has been under development for over a year, and they're actually very far along on it. And the MOU between the district and Mountain View / Palo Alto is kind of a new idea that we've just come up with in the last several weeks to get us more clearly moving forward. So it's really just that they're in different stages. I think ultimately what could happen, because we are exploring those interties in the actual work, which we'll get into in a minute. So we are exploring interties. What could happen in the future is we need some larger agreement between all of these agencies. But we don't think we need it right now to move ahead. There's enough clarity in the work plans for what we're calling the Northwest County Strategic Plan. There's enough in there to get going. And then when we do this, I think it'll be a fairly high-level MOU with the district and Palo Alto / Mountain View. At first, it'll be a high-level, short little MOU just to make sure we're all on the same page. And then, like I say, after more of this technical work is done, we'll probably come back together again and have a more detailed and geographically broad MOU as well.
Okay, thank you. This is very helpful. Thank you. And then just a minor comment. I mean, we're calling this North County. We have East Palo Alto in the mix. I don't know if we want to modify the name, perhaps.
I think it suffices. It's with this Palo Alto Regional Water Quality Control Plant. So I think that's really who it'll be engaged with. The other thing that we may want to just have just a little more discussion about is the reference to, we have a purple pipe tie-in that Mountain View and Sunnyvale are currently involved with each other on. My understanding is that that agreement is a two-party relationship between Mountain View and Sunnyvale. It's not one that Palo Alto has a direct involvement with, although that is an interconnect that would have the consequence of connecting Purple Line water from Palo Alto all the way to Sunnyvale, but it presently connects Mountain View's allocation of Purple Line water, which they have a certain allocation of from the Palo Alto plant, and then Mountain View has made determinations on wanting to go forward with that.
Perhaps we could address this under item 4.3, which is really focused on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that if we're talking at the high level, and then we have the references to some of these sub-elements to it, that we have at least some concept of what we're talking about in these the boundaries of the MOU. So in that case,
would you like Mr. Hausfeld to answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so in that case, I just want to say that my understanding is that interconnect is part of this broader relationship, but it's not specifically part of the MOU between on 4C.
Good afternoon. Greg Hausfeld, Assistant Public Works Director of City Mountain View. That's a good way to put this. Mountain View and Sunnyvale staff have had some preliminary discussions where and what an interconnect might look like. I'll address this a little bit more in our presentation, but at this point, there's nothing set in stone. We are looking at some developments within the city of Mountain View, and as a result of that, exploring probably one of 2 or 3 ways where an interconnection would happen. We would like something that would look a little more permanent and a high volume, and with the development we're looking at that's in Mountain View, kind of on the Sunnyvale border, that's probably not the best opportunity at this point. So, like I said, those are ongoing discussions, and will continue to be out of the context of the MOU you're referring to.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Director Kremen.
So where we're going is we're going to get these MOUs agreed, which are kind of conceptual in nature, and then the idea is for staff to come up with some commercial terms, or we're just going to kind of see where it goes. What are you thinking?
Well, commercial, I think the MOU, as I understand it, and I look for staff to clarify this, would not attempt to wade in at this time into any commercial terms, that would be subsequent development of those understandings, and then codification in subsequent agreements. Is that correct, Mr. Hall?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so should we go ahead and vote on Councilmember Siegel's motion, and maybe we can have that read back so everybody is quite clear on it?
Councilmember Siegel moved, seconded by, has yet to receive a second.
I think it was, oh, was it myself? Okay.
Okay, seconded
go.
by Chair Burt to support the development of 2 memorandums of understandings, MOUs, one between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and the City of Sunnyvale, and one between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and the cities of Mountain View and Palo Alto in support of joint recycled water efforts.
I'm just wondering whether we should include language that says that that we're supporting staff negotiating those MOUs. There's still significant negotiation to maybe less with Sunnyvale, and that they would be just to put in the memo for subsequent adoption by the respective jurisdictions. That seem reasonable?
I'm not sure it's necessary, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So,
Just don't want somebody coming back and inferring that we had taken more action than we were.
I see.
Yeah. Does that sound? Were you able to capture that, David?
Yes, would you like the amended motion?
One more read, I guess.
Councilmember Siegel moved, seconded by Chair Burt, to support the staff development of 2 memorandums of understanding, MOUs, one between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and the City of Sunnyvale, and one between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and the cities of Mountain View and Palo Alto in support of joint recycled water efforts for consideration and potential adoption by the respective legislative bodies.
Great. Sound good? All in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously, I believe. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we move off this item, if that's where the chair's going, this is probably abundantly obvious to everybody at this point, but in the earlier discussion, I mentioned that there was a letter that the city manager of Sunnyvale had sent to the district. That is indeed the copy that was handed out to you a few minutes after I made that point, and it's projected on the screen behind you for those back in the audience. Thank you.
Well, and I guess I need to ask for a clarification on B of this section. It's a request for disposition of the proposed San Jose Water Company Sunnyvale / Palo Alto / Mountain View MOU. Do we need to take some action regarding that? Because the agenda refers to disposition of that.
The chair's pleasure on that. The staff was looking for guidance. It appears to me that the motion, from a staff understanding of the motion that was just passed, that is addressed. But if there's any further comment from any of the city council members here present that would amplify or clarify that, this would be the time to say it.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that gives you adequate clarification. Does anyone else have any other comments on that? All right, thank you. So we move on to item 4.2, which is titled the Northwest County Recycled and Purified Water Efforts. Mr. Hall and Mr. Bobo, I guess, are presenting.
Sorry, Phil Boble, Palo Alto. You'd think after all these years I'd know to hit the button. So we're going to talk now about what we're calling the Northwest County, and I couldn't quite hear Councilmember Du Bois, but I think you sort of questioned what we're referring to there. So we've used this term, Northwest County, to mean the area of the covered by the Palo Alto Regional Water Quality Control Plant. We can think about a better name for it, but Regional Water Quality Control Plant isn't great either. So, so that's the geographic area we're talking about. You've seen this sort of diagram before, and the purple parts of it, dark purple, are what would be incorporated in this strategic plan that was before the district in July. We're seeking, still are seeking, approval of the cost sharing agreement with the district to move forward on a contract for those 4 purple elements. You'll notice all of them on this whole page really roll up into this strategic plan. So the center circle, the strategic plan itself, is something that wouldn't happen immediately. It would happen as the 3 parts to the right are completed and fed into it, and then the other elements are fed into it. We've been talking about, and it is a little bit confusing because there are a number of ways it could ultimately happen, that we tie the various systems together in the county. So at the bottom, you see in sort of a brown color, Mountain View's efforts. They have a contractor, have several contractors over time who are working on their own expansion plans for their distribution system, and it says, and Sunnyvale tie-in. So this is a sort of a, think of it as a smaller tie-in, as Greg Hosfeld described, to be worked out in the future, but we would then bring that up into the strategic plan itself. You'll notice it doesn't, this recycled water strategic plan doesn't include an element for what you might call a much larger tie-in, where a pipeline you could imagine could be built from the Palo Alto treatment plant to points south. And that's not on here. I expect that will, in the MOU that we talked about just now, between Palo Alto, Mountain View, and the Water District, that'll be one of the key things we'll address, is how are we going to accomplish the work to evaluate that idea, what I'd call a larger tie-in, not just the Mountain View, Sunnyvale little, arteries connecting with one another, but rather some larger tie-in. That will be covered in this new MOU that we haven't even drafted yet. And then it could ultimately feed back into this strategic plan as well. But to be honest, that really wasn't envisioned at the time. We're not spending money on that in this round. But we could add to this. We could add it somewhere else. But it would require some serious evaluation. And I just wanted to clarify it. That isn't in this packet of dollars or contract proposal. But the smaller tie-ins possibilities are, and that's what's envisioned with the work that Mountain View and Sunnyvale are doing in the lower center box. The rest of these, I'm not going to go over all of this, but since that Sunnyvale tie-in thing came up, I thought I'd describe that. One thing that's important to Palo Alto and Mountain View, all of our partners really, is that center box on the right, this kind of groundwater analysis. We've kind of all agreed, district staff also, that more work needs to be done to draw conclusions about the aquifers in the Northwest County and the extent to which they would benefit from what you might call recharge, what you might call storage. That whole thing needs to be better explored. And we've talked about this before. Councilmember Siegel wanted to make sure that we also explored the plumes that exist, the contaminated areas in Mountain View and Palo Alto, which unfortunately are extensive, and we'll certainly be doing that. So again, just to sum up, those 4 purple bullets constitute what we've called the contract effort, which we are wanting to see move forward now. Oops, what am I doing? Too far. All right. So a different contract that was actually in the upper left-hand corner of that previous chart was the work that we're doing to look at a relatively small first step to advance water purification at the Palo Alto treatment plant site. There's the consultant has been selected, MNS Engineering. They're actually 50% done with the core tasks, and we expect to be 100% done with those core tasks by December of 16. And then that last bullet says completion of all of the follow-up tasks would be December of next year, 2017. So by December of this year, though, we hope to have a pretty good feasibility study on the first steps, small plant, to do reverse osmosis and to upgrade our water quality, lower the salinity for the Palo Alto and Mountain View recipients. And we're excited about that. We've identified several places on the site, our Palo Alto site, where a relatively small plant of 1 to 2 MGD could fit. It's tight, but it looks very doable. So we're excited about moving ahead on this. I'm going to turn it back over to Garth. I think he wanted to do this one.
Committee members, so on page 46 of your handout is a quick replay on what Mr. Boble mentioned just related to that chart back on your page 44. So these are, in the terms of that strategic plan, those relate back to the blue-purple circles on that particular, or the circles and squares on that chart. These are the key things that would be involved in the strategic plan, and that is, first of all, look at expanding the recycled water pipeline, the one that has already been contemplated and mapped out in terms of EIR work, to South Palo Alto and Stanford Research Park. Expand that. The other one would be the groundwater study that would be looking at the overall optimal use of groundwater, potentially with recharge and ability to take purified water to include in that supply chain. Then number 3 would be a potable reuse study, where really it would be how much opportunity is there taking the recycled water and then bringing it up to a purified water status, which could be utilized again for groundwater recharge, ultimately potentially even for direct potable reuse in the longer term once regs are clarified. And then the final one would be, I think one of the questions came up is, what is the footprint of this all these studies? And this really talks about it is to all of the TRIB agencies that provide wastewater into the Palo Alto plant. That is the target of the partner agencies here, as well as the Santa Clara Valley Water District. So the expansion of recycled water would be looked at to each of those entities to see how feasible it would be. So, and back to Director Kremen's question earlier, what is the end product? These are not yet at the point where you would, the products, once deliverables are completed, would not be at the point where commercial terms are ready, but that would be the leaping point from which commercial terms on any of those that prove to be feasible and are well-funded and supported by the entities involved would be an opportunity to move forward with that. So just in terms of the mechanics of that, so just a quick reminder that the consultant selection work is complete. For that, RMC Water and Environment was selected in a competitive process. The current work is that the scope of work is relatively finalized. There may be some tweaks, but it's ready for ready for execution. The cost share agreement is something that was being discussed at our committee level at an earlier stage, but not been brought forward to our full board for approval yet. And that would be a share that the district potentially would make into that project, where we would pick up 90% of the overall cost, Palo Alto picking up the remaining 10% to carry out that work. The overall scope of work is is contemplated to be $2 million. So the district would potentially be picking out, if the board agrees to that ultimately, would be 10% of that. So the schedule that is hoped for is to have a notice to proceed in December and complete the work back in June of 2019. Should I just add, before we move on, that related to that work, in light of some of the confusion that arose related to multiple parties potentially working with Sunnyvale and so on, and is this particular scope of work perhaps an overlap? I have reviewed it, and my staff has reviewed that scope of work, and I'm satisfied that the scope of work is what was originally contemplated between the district and these entities. It is beneficial, I believe, to all of the entities in that Northwest County area, and it would be necessary for us to complete these particular deliverables identified just a moment ago. So I think the question would probably be, in terms of guidance from the board committee members here, the district board committees members, whenever that committee is ready, as to what steps do they wish staff to take further on that regard.
And if I could put a little finer point on it, being, I guess, the advocate of this next step, we would love it if this committee today would recommend that this item, the Northwest County Recycled Water contract and cost share agreement, be placed back on the district board agenda. It was on in July, and it was deferred pending working out what I now believe has been worked out. The letter, Garth's research on the potential overlap, finding none. So we would greatly appreciate this committee recommending that the item be placed back on the board agenda as soon as possible.
Thank you. So I think that from Palo Alto standpoint, we would certainly support that action, and just open it up to hear from my colleagues on the Water District Board. Any feedback and thoughts on where we stand at the moment?
Mr. Vogel's is correct. I think that we've had a clarification on some of the issues that the board had at the time. And I don't really think it's necessary to have a vote. I think that I'm particularly satisfied that our chairperson could put the issue back on our agenda, and probably the sooner the better, looking at the dates that we have. The headline dates that we have. I'm sure my colleagues will agree with my assessment and my request to our chair.
I would concur with that. I believe the action that our board took was to defer action on that item. So that's fine with putting it back on the agenda.
Great, sounds good. Director Keegan? I mean,
When we say Palo Alto 10%, is that the 5 partners? Do we have like nomenclature for the difference, or is it that pot of money, or how does it, do we?
Well, in this case, it like all things involving money, it's always complicated. So sometimes you see Palo Alto paying for something as the utility. Sometimes you see Mountain View paying for something. Sometimes it's joint between Palo Alto and Mountain View, as most of the recycle water system is today, because it's really serving those two. Sometimes it's all of the partners, and let me just explain why. So our permit for discharge contemplates that, not only contemplates, it requires that we run a recycle water program. Why? Because they're trying to limit the amount of crud that goes into the bay, right? And the more recycled water we use, the less nutrients and other things, although legal at the moment, the less that would be going to the bay. So some of the actions that we take support that permit requirement and are paid for by all the board members. So because of the nature of this sort of strategic plan being all of the above, this money would be paid for by all of the partners in proportionate to the share of their input, basically. It's a little more complicated, but.
Great.
10%. Stanford is like maybe $1 or something like that. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, Stanford would be, yeah, if it were $1, then Stanford would be $3, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
$2 maybe.
Okay. Councilmember Siegel?
I mean 2 cents, sorry. If it were $1. Yeah. Sorry, Stanford people. No.
I was hoping you'd sneak that through.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not on my A game, I don't think, today. So if it's $1, then a couple of cents from Stanford.
So I appreciate you enclosing page 49 when I got out my magnifying glass and read it. I would appreciate for the public record someone describing the difference between recycled water, enhanced recycled water, and advanced treated water. The reason for this is that the success of our effort here really depends upon public acceptance of recycled water for a variety of uses. People are afraid of it, not knowing what it is. And I think if you could explain those terms and where we stand in terms of the plant, that would be helpful. I do want to note that in Southern California, in Rialto, they just opened a fluidized bed reactor, which is treating the perchlorate in the groundwater, and it's going to direct reuse. It's groundwater, it's not wastewater, but a fluidized bed reactor has a whole lot of bacteria in it, and apparently there's acceptance of it down in Rialto.
Do you want to do that?
So anybody want to borrow my magnifying glass?
Oh, can't read it anyway. But, yeah.
Santa Clara Valley Water District. I just wanted to apologize because there was so many information in this sheet that you, as a joint member, requested for staff to put together. We tried to do it somehow that there's so much jargon and names going on, technical names statewide, and we use California Urban Water Agency, we use water use, and we use a statewide definition, and also our team to make sure all on the same page on this glossary. In terms of the difference between tertiary treated, advanced treated, and others, you may see different names going different places, but at least what we agree here, the tertiary treatment is what you have right now in Palo Alto. So that's called, we call recycled water. And then if you use some sort of filtration like microfiltration and also reverse osmosis, which going to take some of the contaminant out and reduce the salt, then this called advanced treated water, which going to blend with existing recycled water, then becomes the actually what we call it here enhanced recycled water, which is recycled water quality is going to get better. Then the same thing that we have right now in San Jose areas by Silicon Valley Advanced Verification Center. Then the other one is when you have microfiltration and RO and advanced oxidation, that becomes full advanced treatment. Some people, they call it FAT, but I don't like it. I like complete advanced treatment. So that's the one actually is going to be used for indirect water reuse in our county and future direct water reuse. That's really the basis of different type of treatment. But there's so much different type of name, they call it this specific one treatment. But when you have all these three treatment processes, we call it full advanced treatment, and this is in the language in the law when legislation put together.
Thank you. On our agenda, we were just told about reminded of the Advanced Water Purification System Feasibility Study Project. What levels of treatment are we exploring in that project?
That one would be that once feasibility study is going to be look at the RO which is microfiltration plus RO, reverse osmosis. That will be the part that we're going to use the system for, and then if needed to be blended back to the recycled water system, that's going to be the part that make the enhanced recycled water quality.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other aspects to item 4.2?
Mr. Chair, this item that we just discussed was actually requested at the previous meeting of the joint committee with Palo Alto, Mountain View, et cetera. And also the page that follows that, simply a map of the area involved, showing all of the recycled water pipelines that are under discussion here, including over to the right, it includes Sunnyvale, just to be more complete, is shown here. So then the next topic I think would be, this completes all the comments on this particular topic. The next one would be to do with the Mountain View Recycled Water Project.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to 4.3, which is the Mountain View Recycled Water Projects, and I think Mr. Hosfeld is going to present to us. Welcome.
Thank you. Greg Hosfeld, City Mountain View. So we talked briefly about the potential intertie to Sunnyvale, but so I won't go over that again. I do want to make one comment in general for Mountain View. We are participating along with Palo Alto and the district in the feasibility study for advanced treatment. So our staff also is doing the technical review. We're putting a lot of faith in that. I think the committee is aware of all the efforts that have been made to date with pipeline relining and stopping infiltration or reducing infiltration. The challenges we've had improving the water quality. So the overriding issue for us at this point is watching that feasibility study. We're supportive of the effort. We like the way it's going. We think that at the end of the year, that's going to give us a lot of justification and information for expanding our own recycled water system within Mountain View and then potentially regionally. There's one small project that we're looking at right now, and that is serving what was to be a Google site is now a LinkedIn site on Middlefield Road. The City of Mountain View has no infrastructure for recycled water in that area, and we are working closely with Sunnyvale so that they can supply that development, which although is in the City of Mountain View is right next to Sunnyvale's recycled water system. I believe it's on the order of 25 acre-feet per year, so not really a huge use of recycled water, but really an opportunity for us to begin developing that partnership for the long term. The larger expansion we're looking at is for a development on the east side of Stevens Creek. That's called the Bayview development, and that's still in the planning stage. And then we would also be supplying the area of the NASA Moffett Field site. The pipeline that runs through NASA Moffett Field is actually under construction. That is on federal land at this point. We are working with project representatives to go ahead and develop agreements wherein we will supply recycled water across Stevens Creek. We are currently reviewing plans for what that's going to look like. We should have one pipeline going across Stevens Creek, hopefully by the end of 2017, so we can start supplying them. And then ultimately, I imagine we will have a second line going across Stevens Creek just to add to system reliability. At this point, I would estimate that would be in the several 100,000 gallons per day of recycled water use, possibly up to 500,000 by the time all the developments are in there. Again, going back to my comments on the feasibility study for the advanced treatment, as the water quality improves, we know that there will be additional uses above and beyond what we foresee at this point. So indoor building, it will be more acceptable for different types of landscaping, cooling towers. So as that water quality improves, we look at that as an expanding effort. Kind of separate and distinct from everything else, we are looking at small increases in the service area within the North Bayshore area of Mountain View. That would be things fairly straightforward, like adding loops to the system, adding a street here and there as there's some new developments. So I think regardless at this point of the progress of the advanced treatment, we will expand our recycled water service area kind of incrementally in preparation for the water quality improvements that we believe will come in long term. And that concludes my comments on Mountain View's efforts at this point, unless there is something else you'd like to know.
Great. Any questions or comments, Mr. Griffith?
Yes. Does Mountain View have any regulations for their new development in terms of requiring dual plumbing for these?
We are not requiring it at this point. We do work with the individual developers to see what they want to do for their sites. Some developers will do some on-site reuse. Some will put in the dual plumbing, but there's not a requirement at this point.
Okay, and can you elaborate a little bit more about Bayview and exactly what that's looking like and what it's going to mean?
I am not intimately familiar with that, and I would defer questions to our Public Works Director, Mike Fuller, who's here. But it will be a larger scale office complex that is within the city of Mountain View city limits, again, east of Stevens Creek. And Mike can add to that.
Mike Fuller, Mountain View Public Works Director. Bayview is a leasehold of Google on federal land. My understanding is it's over 1 million square feet of office space. There may be a very small residential component. The reason I don't know more is it did not go through the city of Mountain View for any land use approvals.
They're planning about 100 units of short-term housing there.
Okay, very small amount. I'm not sure when construction was actually begun. Some rough grading was begun and Google stopped construction. I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is for restarting that, but I understand they do plan to.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add, Google keeps saying soon. So I have a question. Greg, if you could explain, currently for landscaping, let's say the Shoreline Golf Course, to what degree do we use the purple pipe water for that?
Right now, for a while we used pure recycled water. Right now, because of the water quality issues and the fact that the golf course is on landfill, so it has a nice healthy layer of clay a couple feet under the landscaping, we're currently at a blend of 60% recycled and 40% potable.
And when you're referring to improvements in water quality, we're hoping to get it to 100% recycled?
Yes, if we get down to 450 parts per million, which is 450, 500 parts per million TDS through the advanced treatment, we would be able to go back to 100%. That's our goal.
We have some new parks proposed in North Bay Shore and East Wisman. I assume those will include, lawns for playing ball or running dogs. Will the current recycled water supply be suitable for those lawns, or will we need to blend that with potable water as well?
Currently, we're using our recycled water on a couple parks, or at least one large park within the North Bay Shore area. So I know when there's new plantings going in, we're working with the park staff to choose grasses and landscaping that is more salt tolerant. So my anticipation at this point, anything in that area would be 100% recycled, even with the current water quality. Again, increasing the water quality or improving that over the long term would allow our park staff to put some different kinds of landscaping in. That's within the North Bay Shore area. You mentioned Wismet East. There is no recycled water service to that area at this point.
Just then a couple comments first for Councilmember Griffith. A lot of our employers are using the recycled water for landscaping, or if you go to Intuit, for the fountains there, they have nice signs saying that it's not potable water. Some of our redevelopment proposals include dual plumbing, but it's not required. The final comment I have is that our Public Works Department is systematically and carefully moving forward with this plan, and our council is impatient and keeps trying to get them to do more than they've programmed into their efforts.
Yeah, I specifically asked the question because Sunnyvale looked into dual plumbing requirements, I want to say, about 4 years ago. And at the time, the answer was sort of, we're not quite there yet. We're still working on the infrastructure to reach out to them. And there's this whole chicken and egg thing in terms of you run the purple pipes and nobody's there to tie in, or you run the tie in and there are no purple pipes. So, I'm always sort of interested in what other cities are doing in terms of scheduling their infrastructure for future development.
And I believe some of our companies are actually looking at on-site recycling, even though we have recycled water in their area.
Councilmember Du Bois. Mr. Vogel.
Mayor Burt, I was just going to add that Palo Alto, although its system isn't nearly as extensive as Mountain View's, we have put a requirement on the books that in two respects. You have to dual plumb your system. This complex is dual plumbed because it's new. It's LEED platinum, but more importantly, it's a requirement in our ordinance that if you're in no matter where you are in the city of Palo Alto, if you've got more than 100 fixtures, urinals, toilets, then you have to dual plumb. If you're in a area that we've designated I forget what we call it, program area or something, where we know we're going to bring recycled water at some point, then we designate that area and that number drops so that even smaller buildings have to have recycled water when they're rebuilt or substantially remodeled.
Mr. Boble, can you also just share with folks our ordinance on essentially dual plumbing for on-site reuse on residential?
Residential?
I thought that we...
for the laundry to landscape?
Oh.
Yes.
Can you do that?
That's okay. So just to clarify, because this is what you do, you pull up things on your computer. So it's actually the anything over 100,000 square feet that it's going to install 100 or more toilets, we would require dual plumbing right now. And right now, we do have a smaller requirement for dual plumbing if you're in basically a recycled water area and we haven't deemed any area because we don't have a lot of purple pipe in the ground at this point in time. And then the ordinance that you're talking about was now we require laundry to landscaping. So basically any new construction for residents, they have to actually put in the swivel so it's easier to retrofit for laundry to landscaping for gray water.
Does the program that you initially described apply to residential as well as commercial?
The dual plumbing for recycled water is only for commercial buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
I had a
Director
question.
Keegan.
Yes, it seems that we're using dual plumbing for two different kinds of things. I mean, one is where there's purple pipe, a recycled water system that can be brought in. The other is making use of gray water within buildings and using that for other purposes. The latter, I believe, requires some changes potentially in the plumbing code. Am I correct? Is that something the cities are
changes have
pursuing?
already been adopted in the plumbing code and allows the laundry to landscape, which is why we incorporated it into ours last year. If I got that correctly. So that is allowed now.
Okay.
For
and so
gray water.
You're not looking at things a little more grandiose, like taking that wastewater and using it for toilet flushing or things like that. That would kind of be the next step,
That would
right?
be the next step, and there's a group that's working on that, trying to put together something to what the San Francisco Public Utility Commission's already done on basically large-scale on-site reuse of water.
So as a former public works professional, I would strongly encourage the cities to talk amongst themselves and try to adopt similar standards. It certainly makes it easier for the development community, and I think it makes it easier for the public to understand. So just to throw my 2 cents in there. Thank you.
And just so you know, Sustainable Silicon Valley is convening all the different entities in the San Mateo County and Santa Clara County, but we have different rules and requirements. So we are working together, but nothing's moved forward as fast as what's happened in San Francisco.
Great, thank you.
And I fully agree that ultimately we want that standardization. What we've done in some of these cases in other communities is done some initial piloting of a next generation, and then we standardize it. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to, thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Next item, which is an update on recycled and purified water efforts associated with Sunnyvale system. I see we're running a little bit behind schedule, so we'll just try to get all done. I have a hard stop at 1:15. So we were scheduled for until 2:30, correct? Did I have that wrong? 3? I don't see the ending time actually scheduled.
There is no end.
Oh, there is no end to this, okay.
Mr. Chair, we will make sure that there is an end and it is prompt. So This particular presentation, and I'm joined by Mr. Stuffelbein from the city of Sunnyvale to my right. This really is focused on representatives from the city of Sunnyvale, but as you will see as we dive in, it will be of interest, of course, to our board members, but also to the members from City of Palo Alto and Mountain View, as you will see in a moment. So in our working with Sunnyvale, we've looked a lot at focusing at embedding or looking at adjacent facilities for advanced water purification associated with the rebuild of the of the wastewater treatment facility at Sunnyvale. District and Sunnyvale have been working on that, on the concepts around that for well over a year. It could be 2 years, John, for all I can recall. And as mentioned earlier, in order to try to make sure that we work together in a kind of organized fashion on that going forward, we have been working for a while on a draft MOU, and that is reaching finality relatively soon. We're also, and we'll touch on in a moment, have been working with Sunnyvale on non-potable reuse options, and that has to do, for example, with the service to Apple. We'll touch on that in just a moment. In discussions between them, we're going to touch on something relatively new. We brought it up at the June meeting of the Palo Alto Mountain View District Recycle Water Committee right at the end, and which in fact led to this joint committee here. The question posed by staff was would the joint committees potentially would Palo Alto and Mountain View be interested in working with Sunnyvale to look at a discussion around interties that can maybe connect the systems together, and the committee indicated yes. And so we will touch on that in just a moment, because there have been some concepts there and further to be developed. So, John, did you want to say anything about our work together?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So Sunnyvale has made it very clear, the council has made it very clear that we're enthusiastically supportive of moving ahead together with recycled water, both potable and non-potable, and we're kind of taking the lead from the district in terms of what mix of that works best. So we're, and as Councilmember Griffith mentioned, we're in the middle, and so there's a lot of interesting opportunities in terms of connecting to both Palo Alto, Mountain View, potentially even San Jose, and then serving down to the south. So we're very excited about the fact that we're moving ahead on this, and I'll let Garth continue with the presentation.
Quick question: have you had the salinity problems that we've had?
Yes, we have a pretty similar salinity to what you have, and so we're also looking at certainly a purification facility and potentially something similar to Palo Alto, where you're shaving off some of the salt and getting it down. Probably the same reasons that you have, a lot of infiltration close to the bay.
Thank you. So on this slide, your page 55 in your package is a quick summary at the top of the page, the three options that where staff together has spent the most time, options 1, 2, and 3, two of them being embedded with a fairly advanced new technology known as membrane bioreactor, and the third one being the same basic technology that we have over at the Silicon Valley Advanced Purification Center, but scaled appropriately for the Sunnyvale site. So we've looked at those three options in some detail, got preliminary cost estimates on those, and we are progressing mostly with option 3 because it is, from staff's point of view, as reviewed with the board committee earlier, it appears to be more cost effective. Now there's some questions. I think that some of the district board members have raised questions which are valid questions which staff is looking at, because the site for the option 3 that is most promising is a landfill site right adjacent to the plant that poses certain challenges which we believe can be overcome cost effectively, but we have more work to be done on that. While that is happening, at the bottom of the page, there are additional options that we are also looking at that could replace or supplement the options above. One is the concept of instead of going off-site like in option 3 to an adjacent spot, looking at a multi-tiered level, a multi-story level, using a small land footprint within the water pollution control plant of Sunnyvale, probably 3 or 4 stories for a decent-sized purification facility. Has many O&M challenges that we have at least identified, but they may not be insurmountable. So we're taking another close look at that concept. Also, this is a totally different scale of evaluation is contemplated as we looked towards our expedited purified water program. How do we look more broadly in terms of those steps there? One of the options would be to take, rather than do any treatment locally of purified water at Sunnyvale itself, move the wastewater east and south to Zanka Road, to the City of San Jose, Santa Clara's regional wastewater facility, and blend it in there and add to the purified water capacity at that point. So the pipeline would be running east from Sunnyvale to make that happen if that concept had to be to bear fruition. That is something that we're looking at a conceptual stage. Thirdly, on that list at the bottom of the page, something that had previously been not available to us because of a position taken by the City of San Jose has reopened as a possibility, and that is really strongly building interties between the South Bay water recycling system and Sunnyvale system. In other words, the concept there would be that City of Sunnyvale would become an enhanced producer of traditional recycled water, and then optimize the distribution of that, not only within the Sunnyvale area, but moving east into perhaps Santa Clara South Bay water recycling. Staff had this idea many, many years before my time, and as I say, that the door was closed, but now has reopened, and so it would be folly for us to not take another look at that, because in some ways, that is an immediately appealing option. It frees up some of the water that would otherwise be distributed by South Bay Water Recycling and would make that water available for purification at the Zanka Road site. It has a lot of appeal, so we're examining that as well. Finally, if you want to go beyond into the idea of far-reaching ideas, this is where Sunnyvale and Mountain View might have some interest, is the concept of bringing some of the water, the treated wastewater from the Palo Alto plant, bringing it all the way south to Sunnyvale, either treating it there using any of the above options, or passing it right through there all the way down to Zanka Road is a concept we're also contemplating. That would be looked at in terms of the overall countywide master plan, but since that would have a bearing on the solutions that we select and recommend forward to our board on this page, the ones above, we need to take a look at that now to see if that really does make any sense at all. So as you can see, staff has broadened the discussion in terms of what we're looking at, and has stepped back to look at the bigger picture in light of the idea of optimizing for the region. And be interested in any comments at this point, and any amplifications from John.
That's good. I want to talk for a second then also about non-potable, and this is one of the kind of tricky questions is, to what extent do we use our effluent potentially for non-potable use versus potable use? And what some others have kind of concluded is that potable is better, but if you already have the non-potable infrastructure, you should take advantage of it because you're allowing cheaper water to be used for a lower purpose. So that's kind of where we're headed, and the main agreement that we have with the district and the project we've been working with the district on, of course, is the Wolf Road pipeline, and it's well under construction. Anybody that's driven Wolf Road knows that, we look at it as a no regrets project, because at the very least it provides non-potable water to Apple and potentially some customers beyond. We've already heard from Valco and from the Hamptons that they're interested in potentially paying to extend the pipeline further south and getting recycled water down further south, which would be great. But this pipeline also presents an interesting opportunity for potentially potable reuse down to the recharge ponds. So we figured, well, it makes sense, and we got quite a bit of help in terms of funding it from several sources. So we certainly want to make sure that our non-potable customers aren't forgotten, and that we take care of them. And that's one reason that we really like the idea of connecting to Palo Alto and San Jose, because that presents a lot of other options that Sunnyvale alone wouldn't have in terms of both providing for our non-potable customers, whatever the future looks like for them, and maximizing the potable use of our effluent. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Garth.
Councilmember Siegel?
Yeah.
Did you have? Oh.
Looking at the final option on page 55, which shipping the Palo Alto water to either Sunnyvale or Zanka Road for treatment, does this envision shipping it back for use, or would the end users be in Sunnyvale and San Jose?
Since the concept is broadly defined, it could be all of the above. It probably would make more economic sense intuitively for the repurified water to stay and distribute south from San Jose's plant, since the facilities that we're contemplating under advanced feasibility study through the district right now would really have a fairly extensive purified water distribution system. It would be easier to just add to that because there's more places to go there. But it's still too early to say as to whether that's the only way we should look at. So the answer, to go back to my first answer to your question, is it could be all of the above.
So I once heard a presentation a few years ago. Actually, it was a very rainy day around here. That there's some people believe that satellite treatment systems near the point of use may be more energy efficient. I just hope we explore that when we look at these options.
May I answer that? So one of those that's not on the table here because it's a part of the broader expedited purified program the district's looking at is indeed a satellite plant in South San Jose.
Councilmember Du Bois?
Yeah, I guess my impression was the Zenker Road site was kind of a showcase plant. Could you talk about its capacity?
Sure, the capacity of the Zenker Road plant?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So we have Catherine Oven here, the Deputy Officer of Capital, and perhaps, Catherine, would you like to speak to that, since I think you do it with more authority than me?
I can do that. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee, or members of the multiple committees. I'm Catherine Oven, and I am kind of spearheading the development of that purified water program that we are working with the City of San Jose and Santa Clara. The facility that we are contemplating right now would be somewhere on the order of 20 to 30 million gallons per day. In other words, we would receive wastewater effluent from the City of San Jose, Santa Clara's regional wastewater facility, so that we would purify between 20 and 30 MGD and then distribute that. At the present, we're considering primarily groundwater recharge. There may be some injection well activity as well. This would be in the Santa Clara and San Jose, Los Gatos areas. In terms of the actual size of the facility, we are working with the City of San Jose to discharge the RO concentrate, the brine byproduct of the reverse osmosis, into the regional wastewater facilities outfall and mix it with their tertiary treated water that is discharged to the bay. So a very important aspect of this whole study that we're doing now is how much brine or RO concentrate can be discharged to the outfall so as not to get anywhere close to violating any NPDES permit criteria that the City of San Jose has with the regional board. So we're just in the process of finalizing those studies. We are in close communication with the City of San Jose, and within the next few months, we believe we'll have some idea of what that initial size of the expanded purification center will be. I hope that addresses the question.
Yeah, I guess, so you're basically limited by being able to dispose of the brine, is that what I'm hearing?
That the disposal of the brine is going to be a key factor in the size of that facility. At the same time, we're also bringing to our board very shortly a consultant agreement that will look at alternatives to this brine disposal via outfall, but look at more far-reaching and new technologies for handling that brine. And so in the long term, we hope to have other means to manage that RO concentrate.
Great, thank you.
So I have a couple questions. I don't know whether this, maybe first to Mr. Hall, but maybe it's Mr. Boble that'll be able to answer it best. On this option 4, has Palo Alto indicated an interest prospectively in that alternative?
Sure, I'm just zeroing in on the right spot, Mr. Chair. Are you talking about the one which would involve the intertie southbound from Palo Alto Mountain View through to Sunnyvale and beyond, potentially? This is the one on the bottom of your page
55?
55,
Yes.
Yes. So we've been in discussion with, the staff has been in discussion with Palo Alto staff and Mountain View and Sunnyvale for quite some time about that concept. We haven't, as I indicated earlier, we haven't really developed it in any shape or form, but it's simply identified as something that could be of interest.
So it seems like there are two parts to it. One is whether there'd be an intertie for emergency purposes, but a separate issue, which was new to me, is this concept that we might consider piping our treated water down all the way to Zanker to be purified. And I'm not aware of that, and I guess maybe Mr. Bowl can chime in.
Right. We don't have any engineering work or anything underway to look at that yet. So I think the first step on that, what we could call a large pipeline from Palo Alto south, would be to discuss it in very general terms in this new MOU with the district. That would be the first step. And then the second step would be, if we decided to take it with some true feasibility work, some engineering work on it, try to get a cost. But that's not part of any of these existing contracts that we've been talking about.
Okay.
The other thing I might just say that one could also do that isn't part of any of these contracts is we could do a modeling study of the Mountain View system to see how much water we could push through the existing Mountain View system to what points. In other words, how much water, excess water, could we get with the existing pipeline system that Mountain View has to various points in Mountain View's existing system, where you could then tap into it and go south. We haven't done that either, so that's another thing that may be in our future.
Okay, and Phil, one other follow-up question is, given that one of the reasons that we are doing our conventional recycling, our current recycling, is to reduce the discharge to the bay out of our plant of TDS, principally. What's the impact of having this RO brine then just being concentrated and going back and discharging again and blended with the non-recycled water?
Well, a key thing is that the first part of your sentence wasn't spot on. So the reason that that the regional board wants us to reduce flow into the bay is not TDS. It's other stuff. It's metals, it's nutrients, it's these emerging contaminants of concern, pharmaceuticals, etc. So ironically, TDS is actually low, and as you know, we've altered a small portion of the bay right there where we've discharged, and we've converted it from salt marsh to brackish marsh. Not all the way to fresh marsh, but to brackish marsh. That's not particularly good for our two endangered species there, everybody concludes. So actually, a little more salt would be a good thing in our effluent. The problem, though, is what you're getting at is still fundamentally true, is that we've got to watch it because the metals could then go up, the concentration of metals could go up, the concentration of various organics could go up, and that's the rub. However, our initial look, and this will be confirmed in December of 16, but we're pretty sure we can confidently say now that our feasibility study says that we can put at least a 2 MGD plant at the water quality plant, produce reverse osmosis, purified water, well, no, sorry, wrong term. What are we calling that? Just reverse osmosis. Thank you. Enhanced water. We could produce enhanced water and put the brine back in our discharge and not violate any of our limits. In fact, not come particularly close to them. So it looks like that first 1 to 2 MGD step we're talking about is very doable with discharging the brine back into our effluent.
Yeah, if I could just add a couple of just interesting points. Like one of the reasons why you work together is to find synergies. So for example, we're talking about what do we do with this RO concentrate? Well, For one thing, Sunnyvale has a big pond that we use to treat our wastewater that someday will be decommissioned. Presents potentially an opportunity to use engineered wetlands to treat the RO concentrate. Just, you know, that's an idea that we've been tossing around. And the second thing to mention is that if the regional board does say we have to reduce nutrients that we discharge into the bay, it's much easier to remove nutrients from a RO concentrate because it's much less water than removing it from the full effluent. So even if you do have to ultimately reduce that, there's that opportunity.
Thank you. So given the hour, we do have one other issue related to next meeting, which is what's the scope of this committee going forward? Is it the two separate committees? Is it one combined committee? Is it alternating? I don't know whether the water district board members had thoughts on how you would like this to proceed, and I'm interested.
Well, I think it's important to have two separate committees, and I only say that because, as you mentioned, we are in different phases of development and negotiation and so on. So I think it would behoove us to do that, but I think it also would help us to have this same joint committee meeting maybe in between, so maybe quarterly or twice a year or something, so that we all get on the same page about who's on first. Many of the small cities, we don't want to leave them out, and this is a way of their being able to participate, find out what's going on, and the cities that run the plants with the smaller cities can keep up with them. So I think it keeps us all engaged in a meaningful way if we do it that way. Then we can catch up with each other as we do our agreements with Sunnyvale and some again with Mountain View, and they're going to be talking about interties. So I think this will give us the kind of roundabout that we need at this point, especially up north. We have smaller cities, we've got compaction in some areas, and we need to take advantage of that with interties and so on. So that would help. I think it would help the district to concentrate on the speed that we need to with each one. Right now, you know, Sunnyvale, because of their rebuilding their plant, they want to make sure that they're up to speed on our efforts and our mutual efforts, because it makes things move a little smoother. We make quicker decisions. They have some decisions that they only have to make on their plant, how to incorporate our mutual plan and so on. So I think if we do it this way, we'd be better off.
Okay, Board Chair Keegan?
Yes, I just wanted to concur with Director Estremera's comments, and in particular, the fact that I think our intent at the time the water district set up these committees was really to make them be, you know, working groups where the electeds are face-to-face and can kind of resolve issues or address them expeditiously. So as Director Estremera suggested, some of the work is going to be specific to individual cities, but there's some that's going to be kind of more global interest. So I think it's really important that we don't lose track of kind of collectively getting together periodically, the extended group.
That sounds like a great plan. Councilmember Siegel?
I'd just like to understand exactly what this means. Are we talking about every other meeting being a joint meeting between the Palo Alto plant and Sunnyvale, or could somebody just clarify what the proposal is?
I think the way we've worked our various meetings has been, it depends on how far we are with our efforts. So sometimes we meet more often with Sunnyvale. Sometimes we're going to be meeting more often with Palo Alto. It just depends on how quickly we're moving. And then for a collaborative process, because there are different pieces moving at different speeds, we just need to find out what the next comfort level is to have a collaborative meeting. At least, yeah.
So let's leave it at that level tentatively, with the next meeting being for our our side, the Palo Alto group and the Water District, and then Sunnyvale and can work out its own. Do we have a tentative date set for the next meeting? That was December 6th? Okay, that's one we'll stick with for that. Okay, and location? Do we want to continue to have it at this location? I know it's easier parking than the other. Do you want to alternate it back at the Water District headquarters?
Over to the Water District on the next one.
Okay,
And then
sounds
we'll come
great.
back up here.
Very good. And I think on that note, the meeting's adjourned.